Shifting focus to the East African market, while there will be no outright winners in the U.S. trade war, for Kenya, there may be a silver lining. Last year, the country exported goods to the U.S. valued at $737 million. The East African nation hopes that differential tariffs may give its textile sector comparative advantage against competitors that will be harder hit in the trade spat. But this is amid high electricity prices and taxes in the country. Aly-Khan Satchu, CEO of Rich Management, joins us with his take on the prospect. Aly-Khan, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. So Kenya, looking at the glass half full when it comes to Trump's trade policies. And let's start there. Where exactly is the country seeing those pockets of opportunity?
So I think this is primarily a textile AGOA play where Kenya is seeing a comparative advantage. And you saw the very heavy tariffs put on the likes of Lesotho and others who are big textile exporters under AGOA into the US. And I think when Kenya was comparing itself, it was saying, look, you know, it's going to be much, much cheaper now to make these goods in Kenya and export them into the United States. I was quite taken aback at the very generous treatment Kenya received under this tariff regime of President Trump. And it indicates to me that there's somebody behind the scenes who probably is heavily invested and is able to navigate that White House, which is not an insignificant achievement. But yes, surprising. But bear in mind, you know, these decisions are not made on the spur of the moment. You know, a big investment in a factory and so forth, that takes a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and this administration might well be out of power by the time the factory comes on stream. So I would not be doing hoops right now.
And let's talk about, you know, the Kenya-US relationship and bilateral relations for a bit here. How does that look like under the Trump administration? I mean, we know that President William Ruto and Biden had really close relations towards the end of his term. Has that changed with Trump, or are we still seeing the same kind of relations playing through, and perhaps that's why they are quite confident?
That's a very interesting question. I think, you know, President Ruto had a tremendously close relationship with the Biden administration. This was facilitated by Meg Whitman, who was the US ambassador to Nairobi, ex-founder CEO of Hewlett-Packard, very much a Ruto lady, and promoted Kenya as a bastion of stability in a tricky continent, and saw that relationship as a very important and critical one. It's difficult to read as to has this administration under Ruto managed to convert that relationship into a similar one with Trump. I did notice, however, Trump's special envoy and son-in-law on his way to the DRC stopped in Nairobi and made some pronouncements there, so that looked promising. But I would be very surprised if the Ruto administration can replicate what they had under the Biden administration. I'm still very, very curious as to how this has come about.
And we also have AGOA hanging in the balance with, you know, the renewal coming up this year in September. And, you know,
AGOA is dead.
It's dead. So we could possibly then see Kenya, I guess, negotiate another trade deal with the U.S.?
I think everyone's going to be negotiating whatever they can with President Trump. I think AGOA is dead. I mean, it was there to give tariff-free access to the U.S. market to African countries. This administration has thrown that out of the window, and I think that's largely over. So the question is, what comes next? I'm not convinced that Africa is high enough on the Trump radar. At the moment, I think, you know, they've got other things that they're getting their teeth into, but it's not clear to me that they have a strategy or a proper agenda. I was reading, for example, the feedback was coming from the Japanese negotiators who were saying, look, these guys just don't have a plan. We don't know what we're negotiating about.
Yeah.
So I think, if that's what they're saying, can you imagine what's happening for us?
And I guess, that theme around uncertainty will continue to play out. Have there been word or concerns around, I guess, perhaps the impact these tariffs could have on global growth, and then, of course, that filtering through to African economies?
So absolutely, I think the biggest proxy to understand the uncertainty aspect you're speaking about is the price of gold, which is now moving in a kind of exponential manner, and is signaling to all and sundry that the world has become incredibly uncertain. And I think if you really want to look at the level of uncertainty, you just watch that price. And that's been very helpful for South Africa, by the way. But I don't expect this level of uncertainty to come down, because people have lost faith now, particularly in the US, in their ability to make policy for the rest of the world. So I think to regain that trust is something this administration under President Trump is simply not capable of doing mentally, or getting their head around it. They might talk the talk, but they won't be able to do it. So I think it's a very, very uncertain period. And Africa as a continent is always high beta. When things get uncertain in the different markets, it gets very uncertain in our corner. The only working in our favor is we're moving increasingly away from a financialized world, to a world of real things where there's real value for commodities and so forth. And in that context, I think Africa will do well overall.
And with that being said, I guess, is it wise then for Kenya to throw all its eggs in one basket and kind of, peg their hopes on benefiting, or rather, the textile industry benefiting on them getting lower tariffs, or should they be exploring trade with other markets?
Absolutely, I think it's very silly to be throwing, betting everything on this administration in particular. Anything could change. It could change by tomorrow morning, for all I know. You're absolutely correct. I think anyone betting on the Trump administration is taking a very, very poor bet, and that's part of the problem right now.
Yeah.
That is the sense that most countries have, even the biggest allies of the US.
It's interesting to see, how all these countries are navigating the current circumstances, and whether we could possibly see the U.S. being alienated because of its policies. Aly-Khan, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. That was Aly-Khan Satchu, CEO of Rich Management.